Welcome back, everyone, to Feedback Loop. I'm Joey,
And I'm Jeremy.
and I started it off that time. That was me.
We're mixing things up today.
Yeah,
We're having spousal fights, domestic violence ensuing over who starts the podcast. So this week we're letting Joey do it.
special. But yeah, this week
Send
we're
help.
this week we're talking about Melodrama by Lorde, as
Yep,
stated last week. It was Jeremy's pick.
it was. I'm a fan of Lorde. I realized, kind of in a similar vein to the episode we did for the Two Man Gentleman Band, I might have fucked up by picking this album of Lorde, and I'll get into that more at the end. But yeah, I enjoy this album. I enjoy her prior album, Pure Heroin, just as much, if not maybe a little more, maybe a little less. It's kind of hard to say, but yeah. So we'll just kind of get into it. This album is 11 tracks long, 41 minutes, a little bit longer than we're usually doing, but
But not
not
too
terribly
long.
long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
it's a
like an
good length.
hour or something.
That would be ridiculous. We're
That
never
would be
going to listen to an
ridiculous.
album that's an hour and cut to whenever we inevitably do that.
We've already done that.
Uh,
I think the Alexi
well,
Murdoch album was over an hour.
was it? Man, I don't even remember what we do on a weekly basis, man. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Melodrama. The album art, it's kind of like a pastel oil painting
Yeah,
uh,
very very
of
nice.
of Lorde laying in bed with a sheet pulled over. You can see a pillow in the background. It's lots of blues,
Very
and the
moody.
reason it is very moody. And I think the reason I actually learned something while over the course of this week and doing research and stuff. She actually has synesthesia,
Ooh,
and
okay.
when she was recording this album, or when she got the first couple songs for this album together, it had a very blue look to her. So I think that's probably why this painting used for the album art was chosen,
Yeah,
or
because
why it at least has blue in it
she's the
so
only
much.
thing that's like not blue. I mean, her
Yeah,
shadow,
you
I
can
guess,
see her
is.
skin.
So let's get into it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Track one, Green Light. This honestly, it might be my least favorite song on the album.
Really?
It's I don't know, it's kind of generic and poppy, and maybe this was just me like realizing that I fucked up, or making myself think that I fucked up by recommending this album instead of her prior one. It's kind of a generic poppy breakup song, right?
Yeah, it totally is. And I mean, this is the only song I've heard off this album before, like, before this. I actually have
Yeah,
heard this song on
yeah, it
like a.
was a big single.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the other singles were for this album, but yeah.
I would imagine Homemade Dynamite is a single, but we'll get to that. But I mean, yeah, I don't think it's like my I don't hate the song or anything, but yeah, like you said, it is a pretty generic poppy song. But I don't know, it's a little bit too early for you to be thinking that you messed up.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I thought it after I listened to it a few times and really like kind of dug my claws into it to analyze it. But we'll discuss that at the end because I
Yeah.
don't want to kind of spoil anything too soon. But yeah, like we said, the song's a breakup song. This whole album is really like a breakup album, and I found out doing minimal research on this album, as I'm wont to do. Uh, this whole album was actually aimed at a person.
Ooh.
She was in a relationship. I can't remember the guy's name. But this whole album was kind of written about him and their breakup. I think he was like something like 9 years older than her, and they ended up breaking up. So a lot of the themes in this album are about breaking up with him and how that what that means to a celebrity that she to the celebrity that she is, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the green light, she's looking for the green light, is kind of like she's waiting for closure. She's looking for some sense of closure, and she's not gotten it yet. And it kind of comes off as like an optimistic breakup song, if that's such a thing, where she kind of like she still wants him back, maybe, or she's still like she kind of like she's waiting for the green light, I guess, to move on.
Yeah. That I can see that, and I think there's a better example of what you call an optimistic breakup song later in the album.
Sure.
So
This album's full of them.
yeah. This whole album is the breakup album. But that, I mean, that's what music is, isn't it? It's just all breakups. So
It's all breakups. We kind of touched on this in a prior week that breakup. It's a popular thing to write about. It's a common motif in pop music. So while we are hashtag sad boys, I don't think we tend to gravitate towards poppy breakup songs like Taylor Swift esque stuff.
no.
And I'm a fan of Taylor Swift saying
Yeah.
that. So
She's got some bangers, that's for sure.
yeah, but
But
yeah,
moving
this before we move on,
uh-oh.
I just wanted to say the only interesting thing about the song that's really harsh. Not the only interesting thing, but the most interesting thing about this song that I noticed was kind of towards the end. It gets a little bit more distorted. And I thought that was more appealing to me musically because otherwise it's kind of a simple like poppy piano hook kind of a
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, go ahead, take us away.
So sober, like this, I don't know. This is where I feel like, I don't know, for the album for me kind of started. Like I I really started to think, okay, maybe I can enjoy this
Yeah,
because this song was a little deeper, not just your generic pop hit, whatever, something that's going to go on the
right.
radio. It starts to talk about, like, it makes perfect sense that you were talking about this whole album is about what it means to her, because while she is a celebrity, she's also extremely like young.
Yeah,
So
I think she was like, I think she mentioned she was 19 in one of the songs,
yeah, I
so
know
she was
she
extremely
was.
young.
Because I'm pretty sure she was like 17 whenever like Royals or 16 maybe whenever like
Yeah,
all that
she
stuff
was
came
young.
out. But so just from a young person's perspective, this song seems to be about going out and like partying, whatever, finding a person, and the realization after, like, the excitement, I guess, that comes from that, the kind of escape from
Yeah,
the reality from that. It's like she compares it to, like, you wish you could find a pill that could give you this rush, so it's like better
right.
than a drug, and then the
Yeah, and
realization after the fact.
you mentioned it is a party song or it's a song about partying, and this whole album is. You'll kind of notice as we discuss this, a lot of the songs use this theme of a party, quote unquote, as kind of a metaphor. It's a big overarching metaphor that the party is her relationship, like,
Yeah,
or she uses partying in such a way to represent aspects of her relationship at the very least. So a lot of it on the surface, she's singing about a party, but it's deeper than that, and it gets more apparent the further you get into this album, I think.
I have another thought on that. I'll bring it up. I'll table that for now. But
Sure.
I agree.
Yeah,
But
one thing I will say, this song is the first dark has the first real dark lyrics of the album, which is kind of why well, fuck it, we'll go ahead and say it. It's kind of why I regret recommending this one instead of her last one, is because there's not as many of these dark moments, I think, lyrically, that
yeah,
her first album had. Her first album had a really dark feel to it, but I'll kind of dive into that deeper at the end. But this song specifically, kind of, there was a line that stuck out to me that she says, "Jack and Jill get fucked up and possessive when it gets dark," and that's
hmm
kind of like the first time in this album that she kind of goes into that. Like, that's not something that you would expect to hear in necessarily a pop song, especially not one like about a that's fairly this at this point in the album is still fairly standard pop, um, but it kind of gets better in my opinion as it goes on. But yeah, that's just something I noted. That's it's the first use of like some darker language, I guess,
yeah,
uh,
and not to
for her.
discredit pop music, because there's a time and a place for it. People work hard on it. It's an art in itself, but you
Yeah,
don't typically hear that type of stuff, and that's kind of what I listen to music for mostly, which is why I kind of stay away from it. But I
right.
did. There's definitely. We'll get into some songs on this that I saw that in. There's three, I think, in particular that I really liked. So,
I also have three songs that I really like on this album.
uh
Uh,
oh.
The first of which is Homemade Dynamite, actually, which
Oh
is
my
the next
god.
track, track 3. What a segue, we're killing it.
Oh.
Homemade Dynamite is a really fun track.
Mhm.
I like this track for what it is, but the song actually has a deeper connection for me specifically that you probably don't have, and that it was written with Tuvlu, a Swedish electronic pop musician that does a lot of dark pop stuff. I'm a big fan of Tuvlu. Tovlo is the Americanized way of saying it.
Man, I will have to check them out then because
Tuvlu is on my list, and that's the album I mentioned before we started. That if we kept going down this pop hole, I would take you there because she is like my favorite of this like genre of dark pop. So
oh
I
man,
have
I'm
an
so
album
excited
of hers that we want to do at some point.
because this is also one of the songs that I really liked on this album.
Hell
Like
yeah.
I I like her vocals on it. That's like I like the chorus more than I like the verse. I kind of like I
Yeah.
don't know. The the beat of her voice during the verse I like, but
Yes.
her like actual voice is kind of meh for me, but in the
Yeah,
chorus
no,
whenever
she
she's
she doesn't
singing.
have a great voice, especially for what you would expect in pop music. You would expect, a strong female lead to have a very clean and like perfected almost voice. And I think it kind of gives her music character that she doesn't have that. So maybe that's
Definitely.
why I enjoy her as an artist more
Well,
so than a lot of other pop acts.
yeah, she's got like that smoky kind of like raspy almost
Yeah,
voice. And I do really like it in a few other songs. And whenever she's singing the chorus, like I like that. But man, there's that little like in the chorus, there's the beat and everything, and then it'll just like the beat drops out and it hits this little like off key piano synth key,
yeah,
and it's just it feels so good. And then kind of
yeah.
that
This album has a lot of those moments. I think for
oh,
me.
I really like I'll just go out and say it because this is the song that made me realize kind of how much I was gonna like the music on this album. I There's a lot of songs where I really like the music.
Yeah,
Like I can get behind
that's my life.
yeah, the lyrics are fine, but man, there's some beats in here that are pretty nice, pretty nice.
Yeah, speaking of lyrics in the song, I noted that there was another kind of a dark bit to the song. The song's kind of about meeting someone new at a party and having an instant connection, kind of going on with that party theme.
Hmm.
But at some point, they're talking about how drunk they are, and she says, "Might get your friend to drive, but he can hardly see. We'll end up painted on the road, red and chrome, all the broken glass sparkling. I guess
Yeah,
we're partying," and that's kind of like it's so fascinating to me because she's talking about dying in a horrible car crash with her blood and shattered glass all over the fucking road. But at the same time, she's like, I guess we're partying. And it's such a weird contrast to this poppy party music to just kind of talk about dying in a horrific car crash.
definitely. Like that's kind of leads into I don't know what I noticed about the whole partying aspect of it. It's got a very on the surface, this would be a song that you would like hear a bunch of like 18-year-olds be saying, "Oh YOLO, whatever, we're gonna party. It's
Yeah.
whatever, we're gonna crash the car." But she's relating the party to the relationship that she was in. I guess, like you said, it's just I don't want to give
It
away
gives it a
too
deeper
much.
a deeper understanding of like her and how she's processing it, I think.
Yeah, I think this song as because it seems like it would be the other single on this album to me,
Yeah.
which after Greenlight being the first single that I heard where it was very generic and poppy, this song relates to the album on a deeper level than the other one.
Yeah.
So like that's one of the things that made me like this song. Like because the whole album's titled Melodrama
Yep.
and it gets like it makes a deeper connection and this song specifically I feel like connects with that theme because it's talking about the excitement of I mean not good excitement but the excitement of a
Yeah,
bloody
I mean,
car
it's melodrama.
crash.
It's exaggerated, right? It's
Yeah,
not necessarily to be taken literal, but yeah, I agree.
but the Louvre
The
it's
Louvre.
How do you feel about this song?
Track 4, The Louvre. This is one of the other songs that I really, really enjoy on this album.
Ooh.
Are we one and the same on this still, or are we splitting
We're,
ways here?
we're parting ways here,
Oh,
is
that's
what's happening.
unfortunate. So last week I kind of teased that there might be some more trivia or some fun facts buried in this album. One of which was that she wrote the prior song with Tuvalu, who I'm a fan of. This song, The Louvre, was produced by Flume.
Oh, okay, okay.
They're both from New Zealand. They've both worked kind of together. I actually found Lorde because Flume did a remix of a song of her first album, off of her first album, and I really dug it. So like, I went and checked out her first album. It's so much better than Royals, which is why I think I kind of fucked up by recommending this album. But yeah, I actually really enjoy this song. It kind of has a dirty guitar plucking. It's not really dirty in the sense that it's not clean because it is clean guitar. There's not a lot of distortion to it, but it's kind of like palm muted in like low notes that kind of give it a dirty feel to me.
Hmm.
But I think it's really cool musically because it kind of starts with that just kind of like thumping on some lower notes or whatever, and then there's like a synth rumble that builds behind the guitar, and then the drums kick in as she kind of hits the pinnacle of this song where she says broadcast the boom 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 and make them all dance to it.
Yeah,
And it doesn't have a drop in a traditional sense at that point, but it has a Flume feel to the drop that kind of
yeah,
kicks through. And maybe it's just because I'm aware that he produced it that I was looking for that and I made that connection. But it kind of has a good like flow to that drop, for lack of better words.
yeah. I think the thing that kind of kept me from it is I got a very fun, like not fun, but like the band fun vibe from the chorus, and that I think that kept me from, or not the chorus, from the verses, and that
Yeah,
I think that kept me from fully getting into it, I guess.
sure. I
Like,
haven't actually listened to most of Fun's music. I only know that one song that
yeah,
got huge.
yeah,
But I'm
it's
not a fan of Nate Roos. Roos.
right. Yeah, I
I'm
don't.
not a fan of his voice, so I can understand the disdain if you're making connection to music that you don't like. I totally get that.
Yeah,
I
it
will
was
say, lyrically, unless you had something to add real quick before
no,
then,
no, no, no.
lyrically, she is completely fallen for the person that was probably introduced in Homemade Dynamite. It seems. And the song title actually comes. I'm going to read two verses, or I guess it's one verse, but two little sections here that come back to back because I think it's important. She says, "I'll blow all my friendships to sit in hell with you, but we're the greatest. They'll hang us in the Louvre down the back, but who cares? Still the Louvre." And then
Yeah,
she immediately follows that up, that sense of like greatness, with, "Okay, I know that you are not my type. Still I fall. I'm just the sucker who let you fill her mind. But what about love? There's nothing wrong with it." And that kind of implies that while she thinks they're the greatest and she's enjoying this rush of new romance, she knows it's not going to work out. She knows that this is kind of a short term thing, which I thought was an interesting contrast to nail those lyrics back to back.
definitely. Like I picked up on that. Like the fact of a young relationship is what she was talking about. Not all. I kind of saw it as not only a young relationship in the sense that it's early on in a relationship, but young. It's probably between two younger people. Like,
Yeah,
but if the person she's talking about is who you were saying at the beginning with being 9 years older, maybe it's just from her perspective then, and that's why I was thinking that it kind of seems like she puts a lot of emphasis on kind of the honeymoon phase of a
right.
relationship a lot in this album, really, in the whole album. The beginning part where it's all huge and emotions are over the moon and
Yeah,
stuff like
very
that, which,
melodramatic.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Huh. Album's called Melodrama. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, and I'm not really sure how much of the song is about that one guy or if it's about her trying out other people in the wake of all of this relationship. So it's kind of weird to have the album start off with what is clearly a breakup and then kind of go into this other short term relationship. It seems in my eyes, but I guess it could still be about kind of her looking back on the past of the things which she does a couple times throughout this album,
Yeah.
especially later in the album, I think. But
Yeah.
with that, Liability, track number 5. This is the third of my like really really top notch songs on this album.
Okay, this is my
Uh,
second one, just to put it
okay,
out there.
so my three big ones are out. I still like a bunch of other songs throughout the rest of this album, but those are
Mm,
the three big ones for me. It's a very like short, sweet, sad boy song is what I wrote. It's only piano and vocals, and with those vocals, she almost raps certain lyrics and stuff.
yeah.
But the hook of it is, you say I'm a liability, or what is? I don't have the actual lyrics written down, but fuck, I should have looked this up
I don't
before
know the
spouting
exact
on about it.
lyrics, but it's like the general sense
You're,
of,
she says, "You're a little much for me. I'm a
yeah,
liability," or something like to that effect.
I was going to say you're
So
too
this
much
the
for me,
song
but
is,
that's,
yeah, the song is her kind of thinking that she's always going to be a liability to someone,
hmm,
and she has to accept that and realize that she has to focus on herself. If everyone else is going to see her as this kind of weight that's holding them back, then she has to focus on herself. And I actually didn't realize this, because again, I don't focus on lyrics often. I've sang this song to myself in the car a few times. I say a few dozen times, but there are lyrics that I didn't really notice before, but she says, "So I guess I'll go home into the arms of the girl that I love, the only love that I haven't screwed up. She's so hard to please, but she's a forest fire. I do my best to meet her demands, play at romance. We slow dance in the living room, but all that a stranger would see is one girl swaying alone, stroking her cheek." Which is obviously her talking about herself. But I guess I never really picked up on that. I always assumed that she had kind of like another lover, maybe a roommate that she was kind of personifying
yeah,
this thing. But I thought that was kind of a neat transition.
definitely. Like, it's a very relatable emotion, feeling. Kind of, it made me think of all the relationships or friendships in the past and what she was talking about, like friends or people in your life who are only there when it's fun and easy. She talks about
Right.
people who are like, you're too much, or too much for you, or
Yeah.
whatever the lyric
She
was.
she she sings it from the perspective of someone else. She said, "They say you're a
Yeah,
little much for me. You're
yeah,
a liability."
and it's, I don't know, it's a really relatable feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's, I like that there's, this is a breakup album, but there's hints of self care in there where
Yeah.
she is talking about working on her own personality, because even though most of the time when you're feeling like that, it's not really you, it's the way that somebody else is just kind of use, not, I don't want to say using you, but there's plenty of people out there who
Yeah.
only stick around when it's easy. There's plenty of people who only stick around when it's convenient for them, and it can,
Especially when you're that young.
yeah, like that's the thing. This whole album is being written from a person who's not even in the US of age to like drink yet. You're not
Right.
fully an adult, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
not saying that she's not mature. It's,
Right.
I can't
But
write
she was
songs like
young.
this. She was very young,
Yeah.
and it's the way you feel at that time is, if somebody tells you that, you're gonna think, it's, is it me? Like, you gotta,
Yeah.
you're trying to cope with the fact that it could be my personality. Maybe I am just too much. Maybe I'm too intense, because there are points in the album where she talks about, I mean, she focuses on the honeymoon phase of relationships a few times in the album, which is just showering each other, whenever you're a teenager, showering each other with emotions, love. She talks
Yeah.
about all that type of stuff, and I don't know. It's just nice to hear from a younger person who can think to put out the message that It's
Yeah.
good to have self-care in these times of like typical teenagers would be like, my world's ending, and there is a little bit of that in the album, but I don't know. It's just nice to hear a positive message.
Yeah, I think that message is getting a bit more prominent nowadays.
Yeah,
This album released in 2017, so I think this was kind of on the brink of that, or maybe things had been steering in that direction for a while. But it still takes guts to kind of like make a song about that and put that positivity forward, like you said. And I think people can only benefit from that.
yeah.
So good on her for doing so.
Well, the next song, Hard Feelings slash Loveless,
Slash, it's a wombo combo.
long playing track. So the first one,
Yeah,
Hard
it's like 6
Feelings.
minutes long, right?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I think
6 minutes 7 seconds.
yeah, the first half, I guess, which is it's really like 4 minutes or whatever. But Hard Feelings, it's straight up just about the end of a relationship, but it also talks about taking care of yourself after the end, like to piggyback off of the last one, because this is she's talking about taking care of herself the way she would have taken care of the other person in the relationship,
Right.
putting that effort into herself, which is, like I said, it's a good way to go because a lot of people can get really misguided in the end of a relationship not knowing what to do. But if you put your positive energy that you're putting into your relationship into yourself, you're going to come out a better person and better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And she I think this is like the most real description of dealing with a breakup that you'll hear in pop music.
Yeah.
She's like reflecting on the good times a little bit and admitting that she still maybe has some feelings or that she misses him, but she also says she's letting go of things, like little things, until she's so far away from him that they can finally like that she can finally like move on, which is maybe kind of part of tying back to green light. She's still kind of she's working on herself and letting go bit by bit until she can finally move on.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't know. It's just a good, I think she did a good job in naming this track too. Like, hard feelings, it kind
Yeah,
of makes you think of no hard feelings or something like it's going to be something maybe bitter or
yeah,
something, but then
it's
she's
not a clean cut.
yeah, but then she's in the song she's talking about no, these are hard feelings to deal with, but she's talking about her own
Right.
feelings dealing with like they are hard feelings, but she's talking about how to deal with them and I don't know. I
Yeah.
like this half of the
And
song.
really, see, I like the other half better. But before we get into that, because I actually have separate notes for this. Hard Feelings ends. I guess it doesn't necessarily end with it, but towards the end of Hard Feelings, there are a lot of interesting sound effects that she has going on that sounds like metal being warped, like
Yep.
metal cables like warping and bending a little bit, which is definitely not something that you would necessarily expect to hear in a pop album.
Yeah, I was not expecting it at all. Like it sounded like you were in a factory or
Yeah,
something and you could hear
which I'm
metal.
not crazy about, but I thought it was cool that she's kind of like trying to put stuff like that in there just to kind of see what happens.
See, that's what part of what made me like it is because
Interesting.
it was just so out of left field that it just kind of
Yeah,
shook it up a little bit.
that's fair.
Not
Loveless is the second half. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say not to say that Loveless like I don't hate Loveless or anything, but
Right.
I don't know. Her voice in this one just kind of gets to me a little bit.
Yeah, I can hear that, and they have some weird like filtering it seems going on with her voice in this one specifically. But the way I look at Loveless is it's like a bonus track that's kind of dropped in the middle of the album, so
Yeah.
it maybe doesn't necessarily flow with it, but it feels like it's not super fleshed out. But I don't know, it's catchy and it kind of reminds me of a bonus track from the first album. So maybe that's why I like it because that bonus track is one of my favorite songs from that album. But
Yeah. Well,
it, it it's it starts off with a sample. It has two samples actually. One of which is a Paul Simon sample,
Ooh,
where
I
it's
didn't
just
catch
him
that.
talking. He just says, I don't remember what he says, but it's a sample from his album Graceland that she apparently listened to a lot of during the recording of this album. But it also has the drum fill from "In the Air Tonight" by Phil Collins
Oh my
that
god.
kind of like leads into Loveless, and it's modified a little bit. Like I think it's just a clip of that, but they've added some effects to it to make it sound not 100% the same. But yeah, I enjoy it. It's got a big like bass beat to it. Has some interesting samples, like I mentioned, and then
I'll,
some like light keys come in with her vocals, and I don't know.
I'll
I
have to.
really enjoy it
Yeah, I'll
musically.
have to give it another shot because I I love the song Graceland by Paul Simon. I've never heard the whole album, but I like the song. And the message, I will say, the message on Loveless, I really like, and I feel like it does a really good job of leading in to the next track because it's talking about, I don't know, from her perspective, it seems like she's talking about the current generation and
Yeah,
kind of an
she says they're a loveless generation.
yeah, and kind of they get wrapped up in the melodrama. It's talking about kind of the narcissism, kind of the malice that you can feel towards another person because of these high emotions in a relationship. It almost seems like she's hinting at they're addicted to this type of emotion rather than the relationship itself, which she doesn't actually go out and say, but it just seems like a hint towards it, which is why I think it's a good
Yeah, I mean
lead into
she's
that
pretty
song.
much saying like, you want to hurt. She says like, bet you're gonna rip my heart out. Something. It's pretty much she's saying like, you want to hurt my feelings. That's fine. I don't give a shit
Yeah.
because I never really loved you, and that's
Yeah.
just kind of like how this generation is.
Yeah.
At least in this song is what she's kind of alluding to. Not to say that somebody from her generation can't actually love someone,
Yeah.
but
And not to say that people in past generations didn't feel the exact same way.
right. But it's good to kind of call out that I mean, it expresses how she felt at a time and at a point in time,
Yeah.
and she's putting it out there, right? Which
Definitely.
I think is it's the point of music. I think is to kind of
A point she makes in a
just
later
express
song.
yourself.
Boom. Not the next song, but a later song.
The next song, Sober 2, which is also titled Melodrama. It's got a double title because it's the second part, I guess, of Sober, which was the second track on the album, but this is also the title track, I suppose. But yeah, it's a nice like string and piano intro that kind of gives way to simple just vocals and piano chords for the first verse, which
Hmm.
musically I think is pleasing to me. Um, but yeah, this is so if Sober was her going and partying to fill a void in her life that was left by her ex, this song is the aftermath of that party. And it kind of comes back in with the strings and some bass, and then it goes into like a full on hip hop beat, which was
Yeah.
kind of a fun to bop to, I think.
Yeah, it's not one of my top three. We still have yet to get to
Right.
that song yet. But
I have a feeling I know which one it is, but we'll see.
oh, really? Huh.
I'm playing the guessing game this week.
Oh, shit. But like, this, it continues the theme from Loveless, where it's talking about, I don't know, it's talking about how people love the drama associated with things rather than things themselves. Talking
Yeah.
about everyone's either killing or kissing each other and
Yep.
killing it for the drama, I guess.
Yeah, it calls attention to all of the, she says, glamour and trauma
Yeah,
that's caused by being in a relationship.
and the horror. I can't.
And the horror. Yeah, she's got that. She. There's not a lot of moments where you can tell that she has an accent, but yeah, she says horror
Yeah,
instead of horror
but
that
it
us Americans would
rhymes.
say.
I couldn't do
Yeah,
that. If I was writing a
yeah.
song,
She rhymes trauma and horror and
man,
melodrama.
I need to get that New Zealand accent if I'm ever writing songs. I need to have that in my repertoire.
Yeah, you have to be able to change accents at will just to rhyme things.
But yeah, it does. It's a very good quote unquote title track because
Yeah.
halfway a title track of the
Yeah.
album because I don't know, it does a good job of kind of tying all these threads together where it's talking about these huge emotions regarding a breakup and it's talking about people
What
fantasizing or
people see of that. Yeah.
yeah, like glamorizing these huge emotions or being addicted to these emotions and this is the only reason they do things rather
Yeah.
than being committed to a relationship, I guess, or committed to whatever they're doing because in this song it's not to me it wasn't only about a relationship, it was about just life in general. People
Yeah.
are all about the big things, the huge newsworthy whatever tabloid
Yeah. Especially
things.
as a celebrity.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and say that the next track, Rider in the Dark, was your third favorite track. Is that correct?
Segue, and you're correct. Boom.
Nailed it. It's two solid segues,
Oh
I
my
think,
god.
from me today. So I'm gonna mark that one down on my little notepad here.
Man, you can feed
uh,
off the good energy of that for at least a week.
let's hope so. I hope I can get another one next week.
But yes, this is simply because like okay, the music of it is very simple to
Yep,
make you
it's
pay
another piano piece.
yeah, it's to make you pay attention to the lyrics and man, it's this song made me have like a revelation about this album, which I don't know if it's true, but in my head canon of this album, it is true.
Sure,
So
and that's all that matters.
she's talking about gaining fame at an early age, and it's overwhelming at first. She's trying to please everyone, she's trying to look good, she's trying to be that perfect whatever, feels all this pressure on her shoulders.
Yep.
And it's I alluded to it earlier where you were talking about having this audience as a good outlet making music. Like it's this is the song where she talks about the time when she realized that having an audience and being creative is a good outlet for these emotions and it's a good way to express yourself, kind of a therapy type thing. And she's
Yeah.
in it.
And I just think that, like, I don't know, this song actually fell a bit flat for me, because I guess I didn't really use this track as an epiphany moment. It felt like at this point in the album, she's not really introducing any new concepts to it lyrically. She's just kind of rehashing what she got to in earlier songs. At least from what I got out of it, I think it's a great. It's musically, it's fine. I enjoy listening to it, but I feel like it doesn't have a whole lot of substance to it that hasn't already been covered in other songs on this album.
Well, how's this for an epiphany? This whole album, when she's talking about a breakup and you thought it was about a guy, it's about fame itself. And she's talking about her relationship with fame itself from being famous at such a young age. It's the glamour of fame. It's the tabloid nature of fame. Fame is killing people. Fame is people kissing people. It's it's all connected. And this whole album is her coming to terms with her own relationship with the fame that she was given at such a young age.
I think that is very valid. And because I don't think there is a right or wrong answer, first of all, but I think it's kind of a combination, right? It's her dealing with a breakup at such a time in her life that she can have the same epiphany with her life and her career. So it's about the breakup, but it's also about uh, I guess the status that she has as a celebrity. So kind of like what you said, I'm not leaning fully into that tinfoil hat time like you, but yeah, again I didn't have that epiphany for this track, so it other than having that mind blowing alteration, it doesn't have a lot of new concepts necessarily brought in. I thought.
you know, I'll give you that. It doesn't advance the plot too much if you take out that huge plot point that I threw in there.
If you just ignore everything, it's totally fine. The next track, though, Supercut. I I don't necessarily love this track. I don't necessarily hate it. I think it has some really cool bits to it.
Yeah.
This song is seems to be more of a reflective song where she's thinking that all she's seeing is the good memories, all the good times she had. It's a super cut, which is just like a compilation of
Hmm.
all of the good times that she had, and more so fighting with herself and coming to terms with that she thinks she's doing everything right and maybe she's not, and she's just kind of blinding herself or clouding herself or leading her to believe that she's uh, innocent in this whole situation because she only sees the good things. But yeah, I thought musically there's a very interesting point. When she gets to the pre-chorus, she kind of changes it up, and there's some beat. But like the second time, I think she gets to it, it just something about it. There's some like synth. We're just gonna play a clip here.
In your car, the radio up. In your car, the radio up. We keep trying to talk about us. Slow motion, I'm watching our love.
It's just it's so good. It's kind of got a little bit not necessarily silence in it, but the it's kind of going from noisy to not noisy to noisy to not noisy, to use
Definitely.
my own language against me. It's so satisfying to me.
Yeah, it does. Especially because, like, the song, it starts off with kind of that distinct dance beat. It's very,
Yeah,
very,
which I'm not
very,
crazy about.
yeah, but then it changes into, like you said, the very, I don't know, I don't want to say too complex, but I, I don't know, for, especially for a pop song, which I know we've kind of talked about this whole album, it's not, I don't know, I don't consider
We
this,
keep shitting on pop music,
yeah,
and
like,
the reality of this is I enjoy most pop music. I don't know about most, but I enjoy a lot of pop music. Joey doesn't have that kind of background, which is why we're kind of reviewing this album, and we're going to be doing some more pop albums in the future, just because I think he's missing out on on a section. But that's not to say we can't criticize pop music.
yeah.
Like there are a lot of valid complaints, I think,
And
with pop music.
yeah, and just the general stereotype of like, oh,
Yeah,
it's overproduced, whatever, whatever. Like, there's this album is kind of showing me with songs like this, with songs like even Homemade Dynamite, which is that to me that seems like a pretty like it seems like a pop song, but
yeah,
whenever you really listen to it, it ends up being more, especially with the beat, especially with the music, it ends up being more than just your typical, oh, I'm going to throw in four chords. Oh, I'm going to have this person with a
right.
perfect
I'm
voice
so
singing over it.
excited to share with you some Too Flu and some other dark pop stuff that I have on the list. But back to this album. The next track, "Liability Reprise." It's not common that you hear a reprisal in a pop album,
Yeah.
but it's an apt name. It's a reprisal of the song "Liability," which we talked about. It's the fifth track on the album.
Mhm.
This is the 10th track, so we're kind of at the end of the album here. There's still one more track after this one, but it's a pretty meta track in that
Yeah.
she's reflecting on what the party is throughout this whole album. She kind of uses the party as like a metaphor for her life experiences thus far, and uh, it's been kind. She's kind of calling herself on maybe glamorizing it and saying that the party is just the good bits. And so
Yeah.
the song is she's kind of reflecting on liability, and she's kind of acknowledging that maybe the low parts are just part of it. It's all one and the same. She also comes to terms with the fact that she's not a liability uh,
Yeah.
in the song, and she's kind of giving her more self worth that we've kind of touched on a couple times throughout the album. But I really enjoy how the song ends, and that she kind of it feels like a satisfying end to the relationship that maybe she has the closure, and the last thing you hear in the song is just her saying leave, which I think calls back to the earlier songs where she's letting little bits of him go until she can leave. And at this point she's there and ready to go on to the next thing.
Definitely. Like, I, man, you know what? This is making me realize that I think I really like more than three songs on this album.
Yeah, there are a
Cause,
lot of good ones.
I really like this song too. Much like the first Liability, it's she has a vocal effect with her with her
Yeah.
singing that it reminds me of like Imogen Heap.
Yeah. I can see
Imogen,
that.
like that kind of layered, very layered
Right.
vocal type thing.
Kind of harmonizing with yourself, but not really
Yeah.
harmonizing, I guess.
Yeah. It's I don't know, the music in it is good, at least the vocal type music in it is good.
Yeah.
And like you said, she talks about what the party is that she's been talking about this whole album. And it it kind of made me think like this song reinforced kind of the thought that maybe the fame is the party, the relationship
Yeah.
is the party, the drama is the melodrama itself is the party, and she's kind of reflecting on it and finding a way to live with all of those things either ending or not being what she thought they were, then
Right.
like I don't know.
Just taking things for what they are now.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very reflective song. Like you said, a very meta song.
It is, and it opens her up to I think the next track, the final track on the album. So it makes a good segue, unlike some of my segues for this album. But the last track, "Perfect Places."
So, music-wise, it sounds like an easy breezy pop song to kind of
Yeah,
end on, but
it kind of
it's
like follows the cycle, I think, or perpetuates a cycle, in my opinion, musically at least, where it kind of goes back to the green light style music.
definitely. I feel like this song lyrically has more substance though. So,
Yeah, I agree.
I like this song more. Um but like it talks about this song makes me it kind of reinforced all my thoughts about the young current generation is who she's kind of speaking to or speaking
Right,
from their perspective. It talks about like youth dealing with issues coming from kind of their addiction to the melodrama or their glorification of the drama of all these events and kind of thinking to the future, wanting to end up in that perfect place but not necessarily knowing how to get there whenever they're engaging in all these events that cause all this
right.
drama. And I don't know. I just like the
I had a
message of it.
slightly I had a slightly different perspective on this song.
Ooh.
Um, she's talking about going to perfect places via taking things. She says things, which in my mind points to drugs or alcohol or whatever,
Mhm.
and not being able to be alone. So you're being told that, like, yeah, there's a perfect place out there. You just have to find it. And so she's taking things. She's getting drunk. She's partying to try to convince herself that she's so close to this perfect place, or maybe that perfect place is a state of high, or something that's not real. It's like a facade kind of a thing. But it kind of ends in a better place when she's kind of questioning that. She's questioning her own actions. She's saying that there's not really such a thing as a perfect place, despite her constant need to try to find that, which I think shows character growth on her person. And the song kind of ends with her repeating a phrase. She says, "All these nights spent off our faces, trying to find these perfect places. What the fuck are perfect places anyway?" Which I think is a very like strong message to end the album from my perspective of what this song is. Anyway,
I think I like your version better.
well, you can't have it. It's mine.
Is that is better, I think. It's a more apt ending to this album than the stupid shit that I just said.
Yeah, I mean, just because like so much of the album is referring to life as a party, right?
Yeah.
She's kind of reflecting on that, like she did in the liability reprise, but she's furthermore saying like, look, the party, like, even though the music is a bit more upbeat, maybe kind of leading into a cyclical thing, musically, she's kind of reflecting on it and saying like, all of this party it's a facade. There's no end to it. There's no substance to it. I've just been doing it to like occupy my time because I can't handle being alone after this breakup or whatever.
Yeah.
But that perfect place doesn't exist that I've been trying to get to. which I like that. As a sad boy and a real boy, like I don't know. It's kind of good to like level set and say like life's not glamorous. Like there's a lot of downs in life, and you can't just try to cling to highs. You can't just deal with that. Whether that's a literal high or a figurative high, you can't you can't focus on that. You have to let yourself experience the lows in order to get better.
Guess that explains why the album cover is mostly blue.
Yeah, it's very blue. And again, synesthesia, I wonder, I'm fascinated with synesthesia. I wish I had it, even though I probably wouldn't want it. But
I
I don't
don't
know.
know. I wonder if it actually like affects things. People with synesthesia out there, comment, like,
Yeah,
whatever.
let's get Lorde to comment on this
Hey,
herself
Lord.
and tell us. I think she did an interview where she kind of talked about it for this album, which is probably where that snippet that I saw that she had synesthesia came from. But I didn't look into it because who needs research? We're
Yeah,
just two dudes talking about an album.
but that's the charm of it. We don't know
It
anything.
is.
We
We're
don't know
so
anything at
goddamn
all.
charming.
Oh my god.
Anyways, that's the end of the album. So I mentioned before that I've fucked up, I think, in recommending this album because a lot of it musically is very dancey and it doesn't seem to have a lot of substance to it. It seems like you managed to get some of that substance, but her first album, Pure Heroin, is the name of it, but it's not heroin as the drug. Heroin is like the female
Hair.
variant of hero.
Yeah.
Um, it's got a darker feel to it, like in all of the music. It's almost like gothic. Kind of, it's considered
Ooh.
dark pop is the genre, the subgenre of pop that I really like lean into, and I think a lot of Tovlo is considered dark pop and like Banks and stuff, which we might get into at some point. But I think I like her first album musically better, even if it doesn't have as much lyrical substance, I guess, to it. Especially like I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, and people are gonna call me pretentious. I do believe that Royals is the worst song on that album. Not that it's a horrible song, but every other song on that album is so much better to me.
You hipster.
Yeah, I know. It
I
is what it is.
I can't believe you don't like the popular song. That's
Big fucking
ridiculous.
surprise. Jeremy doesn't like the popular song. Uh, but yeah,
But
so back to Melodrama. We kind of touched on it. It is melodrama to its core. It's a very sensational, dramatic piece. I think with a lot of exaggerated events. That's kind of talking about emotions in a very flamboyant way, which I think is a great name for the album. She uses it to process her breakup. I think in your case with fame, in your belief. In my case with just a dude. But
yeah.
it's kind of interesting to hear her process things throughout the course of the album and
Yeah.
ending up in that kind of character growth that I mentioned at the end. That being said, I love several tracks on this, like Homemade Dynamite, The Louvre, Liability, Loveless, Sobertude / Melodrama. Like, there's a lot of them that are good just for the music alone. Not that the
Yeah.
lyrics aren't equally good, but that's just kind of where my mind goes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm with music, I guess, more forgiving than you maybe.
Yeah,
More
absolutely. I'm kind of an
more
asshole about music sometimes.
I tend to just like most things. Or at least I guess I wouldn't say I like most things.
You see the
I
merit in most things.
yeah, I guess that's yeah. And while there are a few songs on here that I'm kind of like about,
Yeah,
I'm definitely like I'll listen to this album again and I'll check out Pure Heroin after this, which I would not have done had I not listened to this album.
right.
So I think it ended up working out because I mean, I
Good.
don't know. Maybe it
Let
would
me
have
know
all
what you
been the
think of
same.
Pure Heroin when you listen to that. I'm glad. I wouldn't have chosen this as an entry point into pop, but you kind of called it out last week when we were trying to decide what album to do, and I just kind of ran with it. Tovlo, might be more up your alley. It might be less up your alley. Fuck if I know. I guess we're gonna find out at some point in the future.
Maybe I'll be
But
dark pop. I'll be a
maybe
dark pop guy.
I am. I think it's great, but not next week. Next week we're going to be discussing Igor,
Igor.
Igor by Tyler the Creator, which is hip hop for those unfamiliar.
For those
Give
not
a
initiated.
little background. Give some context here.
Some context.
Not too much.
Okay. Let me think. How can I give context without giving too much context? It's by Tyler the Creator. It's not necessarily like his early stuff. Like I don't know. I listen to like his early stuff kind of around the time of like Tron Cat and She and those type of songs.
Right.
But this is almost nothing like that. This
Interesting.
is, I wouldn't even call this album full, like, it's not a rap album.
Okay.
It's,
Are we
guess,
getting into Childish Gambino Awaken My Love kind of territory, or?
I mean, it's kind of like hip hop R&B type sort of thing. And it's
so not too far away, but distant.
Yeah. It's not like rap in the sense of if you would have listened to Tyler the Creator 6 years ago, you would think of rap. It's completely different, I'd say. But it's very story driven and I like it. Like there's a very direct narrative to follow. And I don't know. We'll see what you think of it.
Yeah, I have very little / no exposure to Tyler the Creator. I know I've heard snippets of songs, but I couldn't recite any lyrics. I couldn't tell you what the songs were. I wouldn't even be able to like say, "Oh yeah, that's the song I heard," kind of a thing. So we'll see how this goes. Until then, if you guys want to reach out to us, hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud. Leave comments, tweet us. We'll respond. We ain't got nothing better to do.
Yeah.
Wow, that was really southern of me. We ain't got nothing better to do. We don't have anything better to do.
We're not even from the South, man.
We're not even southern. It's just there's some of those language things that come through. But yeah, we're all over the place. You can find us anywhere. Leave us some likes. Leave us some love. It'll go a long way, and we'll respond.
Even just look at the picture because apparently Facebook tracks that. That just freaks me out. Those little numbers at the bottom where it's like 43 people have viewed your post this week. Yeah. Do you want to promote this for $5 so 95% more people can see this?
We're not there yet, but maybe someday. Maybe if enough people like our stuff and share our stuff around, and we get a little bit of a following, we'll get somewhere. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
But
maybe we'll enable ads on our Facebook page.
I don't know. Well, that's a business discussion. We're not going to do that here.
But it's all transparent. Boom.
I mean, I'm okay with 100% transparency, but I think we should have a separate podcast for doing so, or a separate episode at the very least. With that, though, we'll see you next week, and until then, stay in our feedback.
Bye.